Hello, I'm Gwen Maddock. Today I want to talk about creating rich texture using the five senses in creating the publishable novel. For a novel to be successful, the reader must be so totally involved in the story he's reading that he's temporarily unaware of the outside world. Once hooked, it is the writer's job to keep the reader in thrall until the last page. Now, there are many devices to allow the writer to do this. The initial hook is the first, of course. Creating full-bodied characters with which the reader has complete empathy is another. Even with the villain, the reader needs to feel something. He may dislike the character for what he is, but there must be some empathic connection that makes the reader believe that the character is a living, breathing entity. In each scene, the reader needs to be at the elbow of the point of view character throughout, living the action of the scene alongside the character, feeling everything that the character feels. Therefore, the writer has to demonstrate these feelings as vividly as possible. To enable the reader to readily feel the full impact of the character's emotions, that's fear, love, excitement, humiliation perhaps, etc., the writer needs to employ the power of the five senses, that's sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. This will add a rich texture to the story and further bind the reader into the story. The following section illustrates this point. This is a section taken from my own novel called By Lies Betrayed. Hurrying along Morag Street, Stella was startled when a bulky figure suddenly stepped out of a shop doorway onto the pavement ahead. Just another drunk, she thought, trying to calm her jangling nerves, gone in there to relieve himself. But as the figure moved closer, Stella had a shock. It was Tommy Parsons. He stood in front of her, and Stella came to an abrupt stop. "Let me pass, Tommy." Mr. Parsons to you," he snarled. "Thought you'd get away with easy, did you?" "What do you mean?" Stella stepped into the gutter to dodge around him, but he moved too. The skin all over her body prickled, and instinct told her that Tommy Parsons was a dangerous man. "You know well enough," he grated, "you sly cat." Stella clutched her handbag to her chest. "No, I don't know. What do you want?" She couldn't keep the fear from her voice, and she knew that Tommy, like the animal he was, would hear it and act on it. "Got an eyeful tonight, didn't you?" he said harshly, his eyes glittering at the evidence of fear of him. "Saw things you shouldn't." "I saw nothing," Stella cried in panic. "You know too much, as a fact. That brother of yours might trust you, but I don't." Stella's terror mounted. "Tommy, Mr. Parsons, I swear to you I don't know what you're talking about. I had an urgent family business with Cliff, that's all. Please let me pass now." He snorted. "You're going nowhere, missus. Blabbing to the coppers is a capital offence where I come from. Gets you a slit throat from ear to ear." Stella quelled a scream. She mustn't lose her nerve, or she'd be done for. Tommy Parsons meant business. "I have blabbed," she said through chattering teeth, "and I won't." He took his hand out of his pocket. Something steely flashed in the faint light from a nearby street lamp. and Stella's heart almost stopped. A knife! I won't blab, Mr. Parsons, she gibbered, eyeing the blade. I promise. Please believe me. You're too right you won't, you mouthy piece, he snarled. He grasped her arms, and Stella almost choked on the stench of neglect and stale liquor that rose from him. She struggled, but he overpowered her easily. He tried to spin her round so that he'd be behind her, her throat exposed to the blade. Stella fought wildly, hysteria rising. He really was going to kill her. He'd slit her throat right here in the street, and she'd die in a filthy gutter. Stella began to scream like a banshee, blood-curdling screams that began deep in her belly, powered by horror and fear. Frantically, she resisted his attempt to get behind her, beating at his face and chest with feeble fists. Let me go, you murdering beast! He cursed as he tried to subdue her. Finish your urine now, I will, he snarled, his rancid breath making her feel sick. You copper's nark. He finally manoeuvred himself behind her, grabbed her hair and yanked her head back, and the knife was poised to strike. In one last desperate act of self-preservation, Stella kicked backwards with her remaining strength. The heel of her shoe caught him on one ankle. He roared like a maddened bull and dropped the knife. It clattered onto the pavement and spun into the gutter. Furious, he swung round and slapped her face with the back of his hand, a stinging blow. Take that, you bitch, he growled, and that's just for starters. Stella felt something slice into her cheek and screamed hysterically, not knowing whether she'd been cut with a knife. Terror, like she had never known before, powered her, and she screamed anew, and with a final plea for deliverance, Help! Help, murder! As though in answer to her prayer, a piercing police whistle sounded close by. Then again, and then the sound of heavy boots racing closer with each second that passed. Tommy Parsons released her and looked furtively over his shoulder. You're lucky this time, he snarled, but I'll get you. The use of the five senses not only brings a sense of reality to the action, but it also helps to characterize the characters further. Smell, for instance, the stench of neglect and stale liquor. This tells the reader what class of man Tommy is. Hearing, a piercing police whistle sounded. Touch. Stella felt something slice into her cheek. The skin all over her body prickled. Sight. Something steely flashed in the faint light from a nearby street lamp. A knife. Taste. His rancid breath making her feel sick. In the passage, there is also the hint of a sixth sense, as the character's instinct to survive comes into play, and she fights for her life. The five senses add colour to the writing, giving the reader much more enjoyment in the novel. The new writer would do well to make sure his work shows this enrichment of the texture also. Well, that's all for today, folks, and I hope to be back with another episode of writing very soon. Bye for now.